We're back on book reports. It's actually funny that I used to hate doing book reports and now I do them for fun, for people to watch on the internet. Before we get started, I should say this is a totally spoiler review, so if you plan on buying the book and reading it for yourself, just click off the video and come back when you're done. So this week on the Talking with My Hans Book Review Club, or whatever we're calling this, we have the highly anticipated Rise of Skywalker novelization by Rae Carson. And you know what? Now that I say that, anticipation probably isn't even the right word for some of the people that have bought and read this book. I'm actually sure that some people that read this book probably dreaded the day it would come out and probably hoped it never would. However, I am not one of those people. I should also say before we start this review, I really don't hate The Rise of Skywalker all that much. I don't think that it's as good as some of my favorites, and I don't think it'll raise the sort of questions that The Last Jedi did about Star Wars, but still, I really like it. Yeah, it's got some quirks, but when you're asked to wrap up 44 years of films in one 2.5 hour movie, and the character you wanted it to be about dies, I don't know what you're supposed to do. So, you know what? It's not high cinema. It's Star Wars. It's good for what it is. I'll save the rest of my Rise of Skywalker ranting for another video because today is all about this. And I'll be straightforward with you guys. It was alright. We might be spoiled on this channel because we got to read this masterpiece.
You raise me up so I can stand on mountains.
But still, I don't think anything in this book was quite that game-changing. I respect the work that Rae Carson put into this book because I still think that writing a novelization is probably harder than writing your own story in a lot of aspects, so kudos to her for doing an A+ job for what she was given.
What this book does really well is make you say, gee, that would have made this movie a little better if that had made it in. Right off the bat, within the first 50 pages, we're treated to a little more Maz Kanata than was in the movie. She, being friends with Leia, makes her a great friend to Rey when Rey doesn't quite understand what Leia is talking about. Wouldn't that have proved to be a solution to at least some of the plot points that they wanted to include with Leia, but couldn't in the movie? Maz is clearly Force aware, I guess you could say, and would have made another good mentor to Rey. Another really cool plot device that Rae Carson adds is Luke communicating with Leia through the Force. He keeps reminding her that it's her time. Leia, stubborn as ever, doesn't want to die and feels like there's still more to do regarding Rey and the Resistance, but it's a nice touch to see in her brother communicating the same way Obi-Wan communicated with Luke in the original trilogy. Speaking of parallels between other movies and this, Rae Carson does a good job at making some moments more clear in that aspect. One that really struck out to me was that Rey really feels like she's endangering their mission to find the Wayfinder because Kylo and her have their connection. Just like Luke feels he shouldn't have gone to Endor because Vader can sense his presence. It's something little, but I like things like that because it brings the trilogies together and makes them feel relevant. Rae Carson, of course, also had the liberty to add some scenes into the story, and it seemed to me that her added scenes were more inspired on average than the portions she interpreted from the movie. One of my bigger issues with The Rise of Skywalker is that the new characters felt super unimportant and they were just kind of there. However, in the novel, Carson adds more time with people like Zori and Lando that make them feel like more of an important addition to the story. More scenes with Zori especially helped out the story because she gives you a glimpse into life under First Order control and what the stakes are for the Resistance if they fail. Her life on Kijimi is tough and the First Order is really savage. I didn't get that same view from the movie, so it was really cool just to see a little bit more into the state of the galaxy, even though it wasn't necessarily directly connected to the main characters. Lando's extra scenes were really touching. I'm a huge fan of Lando, so I might be biased. There wasn't enough of him in this trilogy, and to see him have so little screen time and barely any impact on the movie was a shame. I'm glad that Rae Carson worked him in more and gave him an emotional journey through the book. Of course, it's also nice to see into the minds of Kylo, Rey, Palpatine, and the other Force wielders of the story. In the movie, it's hard to get into the minds of those characters unless you use flashbacks or extra scenes or other actors, so it leaves you with a mystery and the actor's performance. Sometimes it's okay, but in the case of Rey and Kylo's Force dyad, it was cool to see more of what they saw in their own eyes. A couple scenes really stand out in my mind. The first was Rey and Kylo fighting aboard the wrecked second Death Star, and the connection they had with Leia in that moment. The other is their fight against Palpatine at the end of the book. Just their connection in general is intriguing to me, and I'll always say yes to more of it. Alright, the elephant in the room is the clone of Palpatine, which I feel indifferent about actually. I forget where I heard it, but someone said that the idea that the Sith are always trying to cheat death and live forever is because they can't turn into Force ghosts. Only those who are powerful in the light side could do that. So to think that Palpatine, the ultimate schemer, had planned that one day his apprentice Darth Vader would betray him, as Sith tend to do, and learned how to transfer his consciousness to another body seems reasonable to me. Hell, he had a whole plan to hit the self-destruct button on the Empire when he first died and send the leftovers to the unknown regions, and no one had a problem with that. And I do agree that this whole story would have undercut Palpatine's ultimate evil plan if he wasn't somehow involved. It also made me think that Palpatine maybe knew what he was getting into as far back as the Battle of Endor, because he tries to get Luke to strike him down the same way he tries to convince Rey on Exegol. He's ready and willing to be killed at any time because he knows his soul will transfer to Rey, a much more able body than his dilapidated clone at the time. I know that really wasn't the point during Luke's visit, and it was to try and get him to fully commit to the dark side, but maybe he knew then too. Oh, and this. Yeah, I don't know. Take it or leave it, honestly. Book or movie, I really couldn't care less. Carson did what she could with it in the book, get it made for a form of gratitude, which is fine. The only reason it happened in the first place was pressure from the fans. I will say this, I'm not sure at what point Star Wars stories stopped being about the characters' motivations and started being about what the fans wanted. I have to be honest though, Carson did the best she could. It's a quick read. Just 247 pages in the hardcover version compared to the 336 in The Last Jedi by Jason Fry and 463 pages in Revenge of the Sith. Unfortunately, and you've heard this from me before, it could have been more. The parts directly from the movie were mostly uninspired and shallow. Apart from a few outlying scenes, the majority of the book was just kind of flat. The scenes that excelled more than not were the scenes that she wrote herself. I'm assuming that she wrote them herself because I haven't heard anything about deleted scenes just yet as of this recording. I blew right through this one, and aside from a few scenes like I said, I just didn't get the same emotions from the book that I did from the movie. More than anything, this looks like, and I really hate to say this, damage control from Rae Carson. It looks like J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio had a really bomb script that had to fit into a reasonable amount of time on screen, and they just had to cut some stuff out and leave it to Carson to explain things that should have been done in the movie, especially Palpatine's return. I know this review is shorter than you expected.
Too short for
Rise of Skywalker Novel Review.
And that maybe a movie novelization this controversial deserves a longer video, but I just don't really see many things that alter how I thought about the movie and how it played out. Yeah, it has some nice moments, and it has some moments I didn't go over because I don't want to totally spoil the experience for those of you that want to actually buy this book. People were freaking out over passages that were released from this book weeks ago as if the entire plot of the movie was about to be turned around. And a very small subsect of fans actually thought that Rae Carson would retcon the whole thing and just remake the movie. But neither of those things happened, and neither of them were going to happen. Nevertheless, I was still disappointed that the whole thing was written like she had her laptop out and just wrote down what she was watching in the movie and didn't dive deeper into the characters other than what we could have concluded by ourselves. And that to me is a much, much worse act than the latter two things. So, here's the verdict. Buy at your own risk. It's a fine book. It's not going to change your outlook on the movie if you really feel strongly about it. But your money is better going towards the digital download of the movie because at least it comes with a feature-length documentary and other little tidbits. I really want to know what you thought of the book if you read it. Let's get a discussion going in the comments about this. Alright, well, until next time, I'll see you guys later.